Hey everybody, Al Gattulo here. No podcast this week, but I wanted to get my thoughts down about the Jets and this whole finally they have this big press conference with Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, and of course with Rex Ryan, a week after the season ends and, all this turmoil. Rex Ryan on a beach down in the Bahamas with a tattoo of his wife with a Sanchez jersey on her and, all this other nonsense here. So it was honestly, as usual, the Jets. They make you feel like you're in Bizarro World. It was the most ridiculous press conference I have ever seen in all the years that I have covered sports. As usual, the Jets just getting it wrong. I don't understand why they had to delay the press conference a week. Nothing that was said in the press conference today by Rex or Woody needed to be delayed for a week. Like they needed to, take a deep breath and, and et cetera, et cetera. But let's get down to some of the comments here. First, I'm going to read some of Woody Johnson's comments, and then I'll get into the real meat of it with Rex Ryan. Woody, of course, wouldn't say anything bad about Mike Tannenbaum, who he fired, said the positives outweighed the negatives about Mike Tannenbaum. Well, if the positives outweighed the negatives, then how come Mike Tannenbaum isn't here anymore? How come he's no longer the GM of the NYJ? I don't understand that. If you're going to make a change, you've got to get rid of both the GM and the head coach. Woody then went on to say that he thinks that everything that he said about Rex Ryan in the statement that he gave to the press last week was true. He thinks that it was true. What do you mean you think that it's true? You either know that it's true or it's not. And he reiterated several times about, to the fans that he should have spoken to them sooner. Well, of course he should have. I mean, these are people in his fans and his constituents that pay money for PSLs and the tickets and everything else that come to the ballpark to want to see this team win. He owes it to them to say something a lot sooner. Now, of course, the story in the New York Post this week about how some Jet ticket holders are going to default on their PSLs. They're not going to pay them. Maybe they're not going to re-sign for tickets next year, and they're expecting the Jets are going to sue. Now, he did say, Woody Johnson, that he would have his lawyers look at that he didn't want to answer that right now. But, Dan Snyder tried to do the same thing with Redskin fans, and the public outcry was enormous. Now, look, the Jets should get that money. You paid for that PSL, you've got to pay up for it. Just because the team is doing bad doesn't mean that you can just forget about that PSL. You have to pay for it. It's much like buying a house and having a mortgage. You can't just simply decide you don't want to pay for the mortgage anymore just because you don't like the house. Okay? Now, if you don't have a job, that's one thing. But if you don't like the house, you can't just default on your loan payment and say, you know what, I'm not going to pay it. It's the same thing with the PSL. You can't sit here, folks, and say to me that suddenly because this team is bad, you don't want to, pay for your tickets and your PSL anymore. You just can't do that, okay? But that's a story for another time. All right, let's move on to some of the stuff that Rex Ryan said, which, again, the spin machine working in overtime here. I mean, it's just amazing how the Jets simply just don't get it right and consistently make mistakes and just look like buffoons. So Rex personally thanking Mike Tannenbaum for getting the job. He says that he's approaching this day as his first day as head coach, that he's got 4 years under his belt, but this year is the first year of the new regime. What? What is he saying? The first year of the new year? He said 4 years. They've gone to 2 AFC championship games, and guess what? They lost both of them. This is a guy who doesn't belong as the head coach of the New York Jets anymore. I'm sorry, folks. Then he says it's a new chance for him. He's looking for 2 new coordinators, so obviously confirming the fact that Tony Sparano is gone and Mike Pettin is leaving. But is Mike Pettin leaving to go and take a head coaching job somewhere else? No, he's interviewing to be the Buffalo Bills' new defensive coordinator. What? If he's so friendly with Mike Pettin and they're such good friends and he's so close and he's hoping that he succeeds, elsewhere, why isn't this guy the defensive coordinator of the Jets? What was so bad about him that he needs to leave, that he's not being fired, but he's allowed to go and look for other work? Again, confusion. You either don't like the guy as your defensive coordinator or you do like him and you want him to be a defensive coordinator. I don't understand that. All right, so let's move on from that. He says he wants to move the team in a different direction offensively. He says the ground and pound only came when they had the team that they had. What? What is he talking about? Of course this team was built for ground and pound. You hired Tony Sparano as your offensive coordinator. Tony Sparano is not a guy who's going to send it vertical. He wants to ground and pound. He wants to wear you down. That offense hasn't been, in place with teams in years. They're going back to the 1970s and the early 80s. This is ridiculous. You hired the guy to motivate your offense. You obviously didn't motivate it. You talked about these secret practices that you had up in Cortland this past summer. Okay, about how, you didn't let the media watch anything and how, you were doing these secret plays for Tim Tebow or whatever. You never unleashed the guy. Now, they were asked about Tim Tebow. They say that he's still under contract with the New York Jets, but never really, said, well, it didn't work out, this and that, whatever. Now, Tebow's cap hit is not a lot of money. It's about $1 million if they cut him. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they decide to cut Tim Tebow at some point. Now, the cap hit for Sanchez, that's a different story. We'll get into that in a minute, okay? Rex turning around saying here, and I'm looking at my notes as I was, jotting it down during the press conference, Rex saying that they came up short implementing who I am throughout this team, a physical, aggressive, attack style of football team. Says that he hasn't gotten through to the entire team, thinks the defense has gotten a message, but not the offense. Rex saying he failed in that area. Well, if the defense got that message, how come they weren't making plays? And again, how come Mike Pettin is no longer the defensive coordinator of this team? Who was calling the plays? Was it Mike or was it Rex? We were never clearly sure about that as to who was calling those plays. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, listen, you've gone through 2 coordinators in your 4 years here. You're going to hire a new offensive coordinator, and let me tell you something. Better do something to correct Sanchez here, because if not, Sanchez may or may not be your quarterback. In fact, he may or may not be your quarterback this season, but I got a feeling that he's going to be for a number of reasons, and most of them having to do with the almighty dollar. So we move on, and he says that likely it's going to be Dennis Thurman as the defensive coordinator they're going to hire from within, but as to the offensive coordinator, we don't know. Now, the rumor is, of course, everybody wants him to get Norv Turner. Why is Norv Turner going to take this job? You've got a much better situation down in Dallas with a quarterback that has skills, just can't win the big game in Tony Romo. I'm not saying that Tony Romo's a bad quarterback. I just don't think that he is as good as people say that he is. But Norv Turner's a good offensive coordinator and can mold to Tony Romo. Plus, he's walking into a situation where if they decide to fire Garrett next season, whether it's midway or after the season, Norv Turner could step in and be the head coach because he's got a relationship with Jerry Jones. So it makes perfect sense. Why is he going to come here when Rex has publicly ripped Norv Turner? Why would he want to come here with that? I don't get it. It's the same thing when Marty Schottenheimer was a special assistant. They ran Marty out of town too. Marty couldn't handle it anymore. His son left, went to the Rams, and LaDainian Tomlinson thought that this team was a mess when he retired last season. So why would somebody like that want to come here? I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. Then he says, Rex, and this is one of the best lines that he said all day. I can tell you this, you're not going to want to play the New York Jets this season. Really? I am sure teams are going over their schedules going, when do we have the Jets? Oh, we have the Jets this year? Okay, good. Yeah, we don't have the schedule work. That's going to be home. Yeah, okay, yeah, great. Teams are salivating at the chance to play this team. Why? Because they're a bunch of buffoons. They're not run properly. Listen, some of the players are good on this team. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's the entire team that's bad. There are certain elements of the team that are bad, but they can be fixed. But this is a bad team. And let me tell you something. These guys are circling. They're laughing, going, oh, we're playing the Jets. Win, win. And if you're a Bills, Dolphins, or Patriots, you're excited. You get to play these guys twice next season. You could almost pencil it in for 2 wins. Because, of course, again, Rex has to call out Bill Belichick and talk about how he's going to play. He's going to coach better than Bill Belichick. Guaranteed Belichick is circling the calendar again. When are we playing the Jets? And let me tell you a funny story about Bill Belichick and about Fireman Ed and all this other stuff. I'm in the locker room the year before, okay? Not this past season, but the season before. And Fireman Ed, Deion Branch scores a touchdown in the game. It was a primetime game, and Branch does the Fireman Ed chant in the end zone. And, of course, he's asked about it after the game. Doesn't say anything, kind of, laughs it off or whatever, and deflects the question. Well, Deion is doing an interview with ESPN Radio, the network, for the network, when I work on football Sundays. And it's just he and I left in the locker room, and here comes Bill Belichick walking out. Belichick whispers to him, hey, great game today, Deion. And Deion kind of mouths to him, thanks, coach. And then Belichick turns around and says, love what you did with the Fireman Ed chant, sticking it right up his ass, that asshole. And walks out of the room. And Deion and I are hysterical laughing because we thought that was the greatest thing ever. So you can kind of tell what Bill Belichick thinks of the New York Jets, ladies and gentlemen. And let me tell you something. If you're a Jets fan, you should be worried because, again, Rex is putting his foot into something that he really shouldn't be putting his foot in. And I'm telling you, teams are going to be coming after this Jets organization. I can tell you this, you're not going to want to play the New York Jets. He is out of his mind, Rex Ryan. I'm sorry. That is the most outlandish statement. If the Giants said that, if the Patriots said that, if maybe even the Texans, if they said that, I'd say, okay, you have something there. What do the Jets have? It's a 6-10 team. And speaking of that 6-10 record, okay, Woody Johnson, said during the press conference, well, we came up a little bit short. A little bit short. You didn't make the playoffs. You needed at least 2 to 3 more wins to get in, and you didn't even get that. I'm sorry, but you know what? Mike Tannenbaum went. Rex Ryan should have won as well. Let's continue with Rex's comments. So Sal Palantonio of ESPN asks the question, if this general manager, because it was revealed that the general manager that comes in has to accept Rex Ryan as the head coach, that Rex pretty much has Woody Johnson's, whatever. I don't know what it is. The fact that Woody was looking at him at some point during the press conference, here's Woody here's Rex Ryan, here's Woody Johnson. I mean, are you kidding me? He was looking at him like he was in love. I mean, like gushing over him, like, oh, Valentine's Day right around the corner. I'm going to get you a Pandora charm. It's going to be fantastic. You put it on your bracelet. It's great. Unbelievable. So Sal Pal asks the question, if the general manager that comes in, whoever is hired, says Mark Sanchez is not the guy, will you agree with him? They answer, financial considerations will not be a factor. So you're telling me that you're gonna eat a $17.5 million contract. That's right, folks. $17.5 million if they cut Sanchez. That gets accelerated to the 2013 cap. That's what you're going to have to pay. You know what? The Jets are already $20 million over the cap. Where are they going to get this $17.5 million to buy out Sanchez and send him packing? Now, you want to send Tebow packing at $1 million. That's one thing. But $17.5 million? Folks, Mark Sanchez is going to be the starting quarterback of this Jets team next year. I find it hard to believe that the Jets are going to eat all of that money. There's no way. Rex Ryan's your head coach. Mark Sanchez is your starting quarterback. Santonio Holmes is coming back. Speaking of Santonio Holmes, Rex kept gushing about how he thought if Holmes hadn't gotten injured, that Holmes was going to have a 1,200-yard season. Where? He played 4 games. He did nothing. Nothing. Are you kidding me? To speculate that he was going to have a 1,200-yard season is ridiculous. Again, felt like bizarro world. It felt like we weren't in the same place. Whatever stuff they're shoveling, they all believe it. They're all drinking the Kool-Aid. They're all eating the brownies. Whatever metaphor you want to use, folks. I mean, it's a cliche. It's ridiculous. I've never seen this before in my life. Then Woody was asked, Rex Ryan making the playoffs, does that save his job? Woody says, Rex making the playoffs, not a mandate to keep him beyond 2013. What? So in other words, if I'm a prospective general manager coming into this team, and I know that they were interviewing the Atlanta Falcons guy, again today they were bringing him in for a second interview. I know they talked to the guy from the 49ers. They talked to one of the Giant scouts. If I'm a general manager that's coming into this team, okay, and here's what I have. Here's the template. Here's your quarterback, running backs, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm told that no matter what happens, or pretty much no matter what happens, I shouldn't say, look, they go in the tank and they only get 2 wins. There's no way Rex Ryan keeps his job. But let's say they have a 9-7 season next year, 10-6, 11-5, which, again, I don't think that's going to happen. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, they run the table, they have a decent year, everything breaks right for them. They go 10-5. Rex gets to the playoffs, they go 2 rounds, they get knocked out, they don't even get to the championship game. You're telling me that Rex is going to be here the following season? That he's going to keep him because he's got 2 years left on his contract, folks. $6 million, 2 years, $3 million a year. 2 years. You're telling me that Rex Ryan's going to be the head coach of this team the following season if they don't get to the Super Bowl. To me, they've got to get to the Super Bowl, which, by the way, will be played at MetLife Stadium next year. You're telling me that Rex Ryan is going to be the head coach of this team? I don't buy it. Don't buy it at all. If they don't get to the Super Bowl, folks, Rex Ryan is not going to be the head coach of this team. If I'm the general manager, I'm saying we'll evaluate his performance, but I've got to see something here. If I see a hungry, aggressive team that's playing week in, week out and wants to win, that's one thing. But if I see the team that played this past season, no way. And the season before, no way. I'm sorry. He's not the head coach of this team anymore. And then, of course, finally, after all of that, they get to the tattoo question. And, Woody and Rex, of course, laughs it off. And then he says, if Sanchez doesn't play better, I could tell you that number on the tattoo is changing. It's probably the most honest answer he said during the entire press conference today with Rex Ryan. I'm sorry, folks. You're a Jet fan. I feel for you, okay? You're stuck with this team. You're stuck with this head coach in Rex Ryan. You're stuck with the quarterback in Mark Sanchez. And now you got 17.5 million reasons why you're going to be stuck with Mark Sanchez. You've got Santonio Holmes making $13, $14 million. Another guy you're stuck with. I'd get rid of Calvin Pace. I'd get rid of Tebow. I'd get rid of Sanchez. I'd get rid of all of them. But you know what? You're not going to have the cap maneuverability to do that. So you're stuck. You're stuck with this team. I feel bad for you. I know you want to dump your tickets, dump your PSLs and all that other stuff, but you're going to be stuck with this regime the way it's currently constituted, at least through next season, possibly more. If I'm a general manager, I want no part of this team. And if I'm an offensive coordinator, do I want any input in this team? If Rex is going to be calling all the shots, if Rex is going to be a part of this quote-unquote collaborative effort, this collaborative effort hasn't worked so far. And you know what? If you got rid of Tannenbaum, you had to get rid of Rex too and start fresh. If Sanchez is going to be the guy, okay, that's one thing. You're stuck by the cap, of having to keep him. But you're not stuck with Rex on the cap. That money doesn't count towards the salary cap. You can very easily get rid of him. So obviously Rex has done a masterful job in convincing the owner, Woody Johnson, that he's the right guy for this team. I don't know, folks. I don't know. I think this Jet team is doomed to lose for a number of years to come. We should have an Al Gattuso podcast up and on your way next week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.